Welcome to the Chapter 10 practice. You're going to start off by downloading the Chapter 10 practice Revit file from the LMS. You should have seen that next to the link to this video. And once you get that downloaded, go ahead and just do a save as with your initials in place of the XX in the file name. The practice you'll be doing from the book this week is going to have you place a structural floor, and it's going to also talk about how to place a second floor over the top of it in the form of tile. And that's a pretty good strategy. We use that quite a bit in commercial design because it gives you the ability to create different floor types in different rooms, which is pretty common. In most buildings, you're going to have some areas that might have wood, some areas that might have carpet and other things. So today, though, we're just going to be focusing on placing a single floor in a residential application. And so that's what you're going to be downloading. You should pause this, download, and open that if it's not already. And then go ahead and resume and we'll jump in. Anytime you're working on an existing model, it's always good practice to take a look at it. Take a few minutes and just examine what you have before you get too far into it. And I like to do that in a 3D view as well as other views. And so we'll just go ahead and kind of peek from the underside here. You can see that there's no floor anywhere in this thing. We're going to be creating a garage floor, and we'll also be creating a main floor and a basement floor. So this thing needs actually three separate floors placed in it. Let's also take a look at the site plan view. You can see that this project has a number of reference planes all the way in it, and these are all defining the perimeter, the outer perimeter of the house. But to define that even further, let's go ahead and take a look at the first floor plan. And you can see that the reference plane, it's a little bit hard to tell. I'm going to just turn on thin lines for a minute. But the reference plane is lined up with the dimensions, and it's also lined up with the innermost layer of the outside surface of the wall. So when you think about core boundary layer, that's the layer that is the stud layer, that's the framing lumber, right? And that magic line right there, that's the one that we are going to align all the way down to the foundation. Let me just demonstrate what I'm talking about there. Let's go ahead and just cut a quick section. This is something that we do all the time just to evaluate where we're at. I'm going to just cut a section in this north wall right here. And after I've placed it, I'm going to go ahead and double click on the arrow portion, and we can kind of take a look at that reference plane and where it runs. Now, to see it correctly, we got to change it to the fine detail level. But you can see that that reference plane now is lined up with the outside face of stud, and then it also lines up with the outside face of the concrete. And so that is the proper alignment between the foundation and the framed wall. They're going to run it all the way out to the edge. The siding and the sheathing hang out beyond that. In fact, in reality, they actually hang down a little bit below the top of the foundation wall. You may recall some discussion about that last semester where we talked about how to prevent air infiltration and water penetration coming into the house. But the reason we're looking at a section view right now, and the reason we're even talking about walls and reference planes, is because that reference plane is also sort of the magic boundary that aligns with the floors. So when you think about the floor that is going to be suspended on the foundation wall, that would be sort of like the main floor. That floor is going to sit on the foundation wall, but it's going to run out to and stop at that same magic line, that where that reference plane is. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're creating the floor, paying extra special attention to the boundary of that floor and where it runs. Somewhat differently, we have a scenario in the garage that is not the same, right? So in the garage, we have a foundation wall that comes up to and stops at the underside of the framed wall. And then the garage floor, which is concrete slab on grade, is going to come up and stop at the inside edge of that foundation wall. So let me just cut a section through here and I'll show you what I mean. And these are just temporary sections. We're going to delete these when we're done. Okay, and we'll go ahead and change this to a fine detail level also. Here it is, that foundation wall coming down, or that main wall coming down and sitting on the foundation at that line. In this scenario, the floor is actually going to start at the inside face of the concrete because the foundation wall is actually the formwork almost, and the top of that slab is going to kind of be even with the top of the foundation wall. That's our goal. All right, let's take a look at the south elevation view, because this is the one that has all of the elevation markers in it. The top of the foundation is the level that we're going to place that garage floor on, which is not the same, as you can see, as the first floor. Now, when you insert a floor or create a floor in a project, you are creating it at the elevation indicated, but that's going to be the top of the floor, okay? So it's important to remember that, because roofs work a little bit differently. Roofs, you're actually defining the bottom of the roof, but when you're doing floors, you're defining where the top of the floor is. So whatever thickness you give that floor, it's going to start at the top and it's going to go down from there. Also, top of foundation is a good view to start on, because wherever you're at when you create the floor, that's where it's going to place it. Also, it's going to give us a clear view of the boundary of that floor, where it needs to go, because we have the foundation wall visible in the top of foundation view. So tell me if you can make out where the boundary is going to be for that garage floor. If you look at this sort of complex series of lines, what's happening here, right? And if you're not sure, you can always click on the thing and see what it is, right? So let's go ahead and click on this thing, this outer boundary, and with it selected, you can come over here to the properties, and you can see that this says structural foundation, wall foundation, bearing footing. So this is actually the footing under the foundation wall. If we click on this, you can see that that's the actual foundation wall, that 8-inch concrete foundation. So the floor, if you haven't already guessed, is going to run right up to the inside face of that concrete, because remember, when we said we're going to run it up and stop it right here. So the boundary of that floor has to stop right here. It can't go into the wall, and we shouldn't leave a gap between the wall and where the boundary is. So I'm just going to draw some detail lines just to kind of further illustrate my point. And then I'm going to copy this down. You do not have to do this. Okay, so there we go. That's basically what it's going to look like when we place that floor. So it's going to be 4 inches thick, and it's going to come right up to the edge of the foundation wall. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of those. Switch back to top of foundation view. Here we go. All right, so we're going to create a floor. We're going to go to the architecture tab, floor tool, and we are just going to create an architectural floor. There's some differences between those and the structural floors, but for now we're going to just do this one. And then we need to make sure that we select the right type of floor. You can see right here, there's already one in there called concrete slab 4 inches. That sounds pretty good. If you're ever working on a new project, it's always a good idea just to jump into the type properties, click on edit, and just make sure that all the parameters are correct, the material that it's using looks good, and that the function is accurate. It is a structure. Okay, so that all looks good. Let's go ahead and place the floor. So I went ahead and started it. Remember that you have a few things to look at in the ribbon before you just start clicking, okay? So the first thing you'll notice is that the default position or selection process is the Pick Walls tool, but we can use any one of these tools to define the boundary. But the Pick Walls tool makes sense because this particular floor is going to be bounded by a wall. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll also want to take a peek at the parameters both in the options bar and in the properties window. And you can see right now, and I'm not sure why this is the case, but it's saying that it's going to place this floor at the level top of foundation, which is good, but it's also saying that it's going to give it a height offset from level of 3 feet. So that slab will be floating in the air 3 feet above where it's supposed to go. So let's go ahead and change that to 0 if yours also says 3 feet. And now we can start picking walls. You'll notice that where it places the line depends on what part of the wall you hover your cursor on. So make sure that you hover it toward the inside edge, and you can see that it placed that first boundary line right where it was supposed to. And then once you have that inside edge, it becomes less important where you click, but I always just try to stay to the inside still anyway. And you'll notice it's cleaning the corners up for me. Now this one I am going to have to clean up because I picked the wall and it runs all the way down here. So I'm just going to use this trim extend to corner, pick both of those lines. Remember to pick it on the part of the line that you want to keep. And up here it looks like it's already cleaned that corner up. So theoretically, I should be done. This should work just fine how it is. We'll click finish. And now it's saying, would you like the walls that go up to this floor's top floor topo solids level to attach to its bottom? All right, now think back on what we just looked at in that section view. Where is the top of that floor going to be? It's going to be right at the top of the foundation. So if we said yes to this, it would actually cut that foundation wall down and stop it at the bottom of the slab, which is not what we want. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and say don't attach. Now it's saying the floor roof topo solid overlaps the highlighted walls. Would you like to join the geometry and cut the overlapping volume out of the walls? You'll have an opportunity to see what that does if we say yes to that. In this case, it shouldn't matter because it's not actually overlapping the wall. It's just touching the wall. So I'm going to say no anyway, because I don't want any of the geometry of my walls to be affected in any way. All right, let's go back to our first floor where we have our section cut, and let's go back into that view. And now you can see that that slab is coming up and it's joining. It's not really joining, it's coming up and touching the edge of that foundation wall, and the tops of those two things are aligned as they should be. Sometimes it's a good idea to take a couple more sections and just make sure that the other walls aligned the way that they're supposed to. So I'm just going to kind of cut one through here and take a quick look. I'm pretty confident in the other two. This one does look like it comes over and it stops right where it's supposed to as well. So I think I'm okay. I think I did okay on that one. The only thing I am noticing though is that the concrete for the wall appears to be a different material than the concrete for the floor. So usually it's a good idea to keep some consistency there. Let's just take a look and see what material this one is using. We'll compare it to what this one's using. So I'm going to click Edit Type. I'm going to click Edit. And then I'm going to look here and it says Concrete Cast in Place Gray. All right. So just for fun, I'm going to swipe that. Control C to copy it to the clipboard. Cancel, cancel. And then let's find out what's going on with the floor. So we'll Edit Type. Click on Edit. And it says Concrete Cast in Place Gray. So for some reason, they're looking different, but they're not different. And so I might have to do a little bit more investigation as to why. So this is not intended to be part of this lesson, but my suspicion is that there is a graphic setting for floors that is different than the graphic setting for walls. And so I'm going to kind of dig into that and see what's going on there. But I'm going to do that later. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the top of foundation view. All right, so here we're looking at the concrete floor. A couple of things I want to talk about in this view. One of them is how can we make a change to that floor if, for example, we looked at a section view and it wasn't quite right? What if we wanted to redo that boundary? Well, all we have to do for that is select the floor and then click Edit Boundary. So I'm going to click on the floor right now and nothing's happening. So I'm clicking right now on the floor, but nothing is getting selected. So you may already know this, but just keep this in mind. This is something I toggle on and off all the time. It's called Select Elements by Face. Now there are other ways you can pick an object without selecting its face, but certainly the easiest way would be to just check that box, and now when I click on the floor, it's still nothing happening. And I think that's because of my view settings. And yours are probably this way too for first floor. So go ahead and change the visual style from wireframe to hidden line. So it kind of has to be in a hidden line view for you to be able to pick the surface. But now you can see it's highlighting. So when I select that surface now, the option is right up here in the ribbon, Edit Boundary. And then it just kind of goes back to this magenta color. All right, now what if I had an opening? And we're actually going to get a chance to see this with this stairway, right? We're going to have to create an opening for that stairway when we do the main floor. But for this one, if we wanted to, for some reason, let's say, for example, we had a trench drain going across here or something. If you create another closed loop inside of the loop, right, something like that, that's basically going to create a hole inside of the overall floor. So let's go ahead and click Finish, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. We're just going to say, again, don't attach. and no to this. And now you can see that the floor is complete around here, but there's a void right in the middle. So that's how we can create voids or openings inside the overall thing. Just remember that the floor itself and any openings you create in the floor all have to be closed loops whose lines all meet end to end. Now that's not to say they have to be rectangles. They can be circles, squares, triangles, polygons, whatever you want, as long as all of the lines that make up that loop meet end to end and there's no gaps. The other thing I want to mention about floors is that typically we do not leave the hatch visible, okay? So the reason is because on a floor plan, we want to be able to see text easily, dimensions, things like that. And when you have speckles all over your floor or lines or whatever the hatch may be, it makes it really hard to read. So the standard rule is turn that hatch off in Revit. When you see hatch on your floor, get rid of it. Do it soon because it's just going to get in your way. We don't need it. All right, so to do that, a couple of different ways we can do that. One of them is by using the visibility graphic overrides. And we can go to the floor settings right here. And you can see that floors is checked so it's visible. But over here, we can talk about the visibility of other things. And we're interested in the projection surface. We're not cutting through this floor right now. We're looking at it projection in plan view, right? So we'd have to come down to and look at, okay, are we wanting to change the lines, the patterns, or the transparency features? And the correct answer there would be the patterns, right? So that would be the surface pattern. We come down, find out where those two things meet, and we click on that cell. That's going to bring up this box right here, and I usually just like to uncheck both of these for foreground and background. It just makes that pattern not visible. Okay? We could also change what the pattern looks like, but we don't want a pattern at all. So we just do that, say OK, say OK again, and now the pattern goes away. The other place we can do that is under the Manage tab. And the Manage tab gives you a tool called Object Styles over here on the left. And it looks very much like Visibility Graphic Overrides. The difference is, if we change it here, it's going to change it in all of our views. Okay, so if I turn off the patterns for floors in this window, that means that no matter what view I'm looking at that floor, as a projected surface, it's not going to display the pattern. And now that I've gone 10 miles down that road of discussion, I'm realizing that it actually doesn't have a surface pattern setting in the object style. So this would only apply to the lines in either cut or projection and the pattern that they're using. So we won't make any changes here. We'll just click cancel, and then we're back to our drawing. Okay, I think that's enough of a primer. We're going to go ahead and tackle the rest of this stuff in class. And so go ahead and save your work. We will be reopening this file in class, so we'll just kind of pick up where we left off.